doubt the movie has a compelling idea, and after seeing a few of the sequences I thought it had a lot of potential. However, Roadhouse is a disappointing film due to its poorly developed characters and a few cheesy action scenes. Let's see what transpired in the movie, what kind of conflict Dalton was going through, and whether or not he was able to resolve it. What does Frankie offer Dalton? Frankie saw Dalton during a fight, and she realized the kind of reputation the man had. The other fighter surrendered even before stepping into the ring because Dalton was a renowned MMA fighter, and he was known to be one of the most notorious in the business. Frankie realized that Dalton had found a way of earning quick money, and he very smartly made use of his public image and made sure that he didn't make a lot of effort for it. Frankie went up to Dalton and told him that she would be willing to pay him a good amount if came to her roadhouse and saved it from the goons who came there every day and caused a lot of nuisance. Dalton was not interested in taking her offer, but deep down he knew that he needed that money. Those fights didn't pay him enough so that he could lead a comfortable life, and he knew that eventually he would have to find another line of work to sustain himself. Dalton got an epiphany of sorts when he was sitting in his car after it got hit by a train. Dalton survived the crash, and he decided to go to the Roadhouse in Glass Key, Florida. Frankie was elated when she saw him in her club. On the first day itself, Dalton taught Dee a lesson. Dell believed that he was invincible, and that it was his birthright to destroy the Roadhouse property and terrorize the staff. Dell didn't know who he was up against, and so in his haughtiness, he attacked Dalton, believing that he would overpower him in seconds. Dalton thrashed him like a punching bag and threw him out of the club. What did Ben Brandt want? Ben Brandt was informed that the Roadhouse's new bouncer had physically assaulted his men. Ben was enraged because more than likely he had never experienced such contempt from anyone. Ben's father had a reputation for being a criminal, and as such the entire town was afraid of him. With his contacts in the proper places, he ensured that everyone knew that he was still capable of doing anything with them even while he was incarcerated. Before his father announced him to be an incumbent, Ben Brandt intended to find a solution to the lingering problem. Meanwhile, Dell committed the biggest mistake of his life when he once again went to meet Dalton because he wanted to take revenge on him. Dell couldn't digest the fact that he had been publicly humiliated in his own area, so he made up his mind to kill Dalton, but Dalton had other plans. He not only thrashed the guy once again, but he threw him into the sea and fed him to the crocodile. Ben Brandt went to meet Dalton, and we realized that the man wanted to make a resort in the area, and Frankie's club was the only roadblock that was in his way. Ben had plans to revamp the entire area, but Frankie was just too stubborn to give up that easily. That was why he started sending his men to the Roadhouse to make sure that she couldn't carry out her business in peace. Ben, after meeting Dalton, realized very quickly that this was not somebody who would get intimidated by him. Before Ben could do anything, his father had to know about the issue, and he decided to do something about what happened in Dalton's past. Dalton was plagued by the incident in which he killed a man in a professional mixed martial arts match. Dalton didn't know what went wrong inside the man during the match that led to him inflicting such devastating injuries, even if he was his friend. Despite the fact that Dalton had already vanquished him, he continued to punch him until he passed out. Dalton met Ellie after arriving in Glass Key, and she thought his demeanor was fascinating. Ellie told Dalton exactly how she felt since she was an honest person. Dalton, though, was probably not a proud guy of who he was. He was aware that he would never be able to erase his troubled background. He knew that he was responsible for the death of his friend, and that's why he told Ellie that he was not the kind of man she would want to spend her entire lifetime with. Ellie's father was the local sheriff, and he worked for Ben. The sheriff took Dalton under arrest, and had Ellie been there, he would definitely have shot or framed him for some crime. Dalton had made up his mind that he would leave the Glass Key. Frankie had not told him everything about the ongoing issue, and Dalton in a way felt as if he was being deceived. He told Frankie that he was scared of reaching a point where he would do something like what he had done in the past. Dalton was about to leave when something happened that changed his decision and coerced him to teach Ben and others a lesson. How did Dalton get rid of KNX? KNX was a beast, and he wasn't by Ben's father to deal with Dalton and make him pay for his actions. The first time KNX and Dalton came face to face, the former thrashed the latter in Frankie's club. Dalton was on his way back when he found that Charlie's bookstore had been burned and there was no sign of her. That triggered Dalton because he was fond of the little girl. He knew that he had been pushed to the point where his inner beast would be unleashed. That's when Ellie's father came to him and told him that his daughter had been kidnapped by Ben. Dalton probably knew that the sheriff was deceiving him, but he still went to meet Ben because he wanted to settle some scores. After killing Ben in the climax of Roadhouse, Knox pursued Dalton. After stabbing Dalton, there was a moment when it seemed like the combatant would give up from his wounds. However, he managed to gather all his strength and launched a fierce counterattack. Knox was rendered unconscious, and it appeared that he would not survive the encounter. After a while, things in Glass Kia returned to normal, and Dalton at last visited his homeland expecting to live a quiet life from then on. Is KNX dead or alive? We learned that Knox was still alive in the post-credits sequence of Roadhouse. He had terrorized the medical personnel and left the hospital half-dressed as usual. Given that Knox was not the type of man to easily forget or let go of things, I'm very certain that he would attempt to exact revenge on John Dalton. That man enjoyed confrontation, and he felt a great surge of adrenaline when he gave someone a good beating. He was unquestionably a sociopath, and he would not allow Dalton to enjoy a peaceful existence. There will undoubtedly be another in-person encounter between Dalton and Knox in any Roadhouse sequel. Dalton wanted to live a life devoid of any hassles as he had had his share of controversies, and was tired of dealing with all the baggage from his past life. Dalton wanted to start fresh, but he kept making enemies that didn't let him do that. It would be interesting to see in which direction the makers take this rivalry, and if Dalton is able to put an end to it. If you liked the video, then subscribe to the channel and click the thumbs up button. Thanks.